Naraka was frozen with disbelief. Mura was gone. His sons, the fiercest warriors of the land, lay lifeless. He had to teach these puny humans who had dared enter his kingdom and cause this carnage such a lesson that it would haunt the three worlds in their darkest dreams forever. A story, a sprinkling of magic. Namaskaram. Welcome to Stories and Magic with me, Mahita. Come with me today to part 3 of the story of Naraka Chaturdashi, one of the many reasons Deepavali is celebrated in our country. A shower of 1,000 poisoned arrows announced Narakasura's arrival to the battle, and quick as thought, Krishna dropped an impenetrable net around the great Garuda. Naraka smashed it with a vajra. Tireless, protected by the enchantment of boons and the greatest of Mahavishnu's astras, the Asura was a warrior greater than Vali and Ravana together. Arrows and lances flew between the warriors, some piercing Krishna's chest, drawing blood, others leaving their mark on the Asura, drawing groans of agony. They launched their deadliest weapons against each other, attacked each other with lances and swords and javelins and maces. Garuda, flapping his wings that spanned the width of the earth, clawed at Naraka's war elephant, and the great beast, trumpeting frantically, reared, almost dislodging the Asura. Naraka, controlling the pain-maddened beast with one hand, flung with the strength of 100,000 men his longest, sharpest javelin at Krishna, which, if it had struck, would have opened 1,000 wounds in him all at once. Satyabhama, laughing, leaped into the skies and caught the astra as a child, eager to catch a ball tossed by a playmate would, and hurled it back at the Danava, snapping his flagstaff clean into two. Krishna, pulling back the string of the mighty bow Sharanga, shot an arrow which shattered the Asura's own bow and again pulled back the strings, aiming for the Asura's heart. But before he could strike, Naraka flung his diamond mace at the Lord, and Krishna, reeling from the blow, forceful enough to push the mighty Himavan into the ocean, slumped unconscious on the back of Garuda. Seeing Murari fallen, Satyabhama was filled with a rage that rivaled even the Mahadevas at its most fierce. Filling her mind with thoughts of the primal Shakti, channeling into her limbs the terrible anger of every innocent that had ever been wronged, she drew 7 arrows all at once and shot them at Naraka. Blood spurted from the crown of Naraka's head, from his forehead, throat, and from between his ribs. The Danava's life's blood pooled in his lap. Eyes fixed on the Devi, wide with disbelief, he clutched at the arrow lodged deep in his heart. How could this be? How could Brahma's boon be false? Who was the shining woman who sat behind Govinda? Who was the Shakti, this woman who had fought so fiercely alongside her partner, closer to him than his shadow? The woman whose every diamond-tipped arrow flew truer than his own astras. The answer to his questions lay in the words of the boon he had asked of Brahma in all those years before his association with the wicked Bana, before he had conquered territories in all the worlds, before the defiling of 100,000 yajnas, before he had kidnapped the 16,000 kanyas, before he had snatched the earrings of Aditi, the mother of the Devas, and left her bleeding. He knew his end had come. Without even a sound, the mighty Bhama fell to his side, sliding off his war elephant, falling through the skies like a mighty eagle whose wings had been sheared. Uncaring of his fate, Satyabhama turned to Krishna. To her relief, he had risen, smiling, as if the blow from Naraka's mace had been a mere tap of a playmate's hand. "Go to him, Bhama," Krishna said. as wicked as he might have been, he fought bravely. Go to him as warrior to warrior. Bama looked at the fallen Danava and felt a sudden, startling pain at seeing him thus beaten, broken, just a minute away from having his life energies leave him. Her steps quickened, and overcome by an urge she could neither explain nor control, she knelt by his side, gently removed his crown from his head, stained with blood from the wounds her own arrows had caused, and wiped his brow with the ends of her silk upper cloth. And as she placed the Danava's head in her lap, her mind filled with a jumble of images of being grabbed in an embrace by the Asura Hiranyaksha, and of being taken away, of spending millennia imprisoned under the oceans, and of rising to the surface again as Krishna in his avatara as the Varaha, restored her to her rightful place in the universe. She remembered holding this Danava Bauma in her arms, not as he was now, but as the tender fruit of her union with the boar-faced one. She remembered the joyful pride of watching him grow, the ache of letting him go, and the love that turned to dread as he transformed from beloved child to feared conqueror of the three worlds, protected by a boon that said he could be killed only by his mother, Bhuma Devi. And Satyabhama, avatara of Bhuma Devi, drew her fallen child to her breast. She kissed the blood from Bauma's forehead and wept over the one who could have been the best of the best, but chose otherwise, leading to his end at the hands of his own mother, at Satyabhama's hands. She threw her head back in a howl of pain, and the earth trembled, and sleeping volcanoes woke in a rush of molten heat. And as Bauma's breath stilled and the beat of his heart slowed, Krishna and Satyabhama, parents of Bauma in another birth, heard the whisper of his voice. "Don't cry for me, mother," the Asariri said. "Let something good come of this son of Bhuma Devi and Varahaswami. Promise that this day will be celebrated forevermore as the day of the triumph of good over evil." Krishna pulled out his conch, the Panchajanya, and blew on it 3 long, loud blasts, signifying victory again. Bauma's son Bhagadatta was set on the throne. The 16,000 women and more were released from their captivity. The treasures looted from various kingdoms was restored to their rightful owners, and Aditi's earrings were handed back to her. Krishna and Satyabhama returned to Dwaraka bearing gifts from the gods. They returned to showers of flowers, to a warrior's welcome. They were anointed with scented oils, rubbed down with healing herbs, and dressed in fine silks. And then, and forever after, lamps were lit in celebration, signifying that in the eternal battle of Dharma over Adharma, the light of good would always triumph over the darkness of evil.